Good morning, members, officers and members of the public joining us today. Welcome to this meeting of the Licensing Committee. My name is Councillor Annika Osborne and I will be chairing the committee today. As the Licensing Committee currently has no Vice Chair, please could I call for nominations for a Vice Chair for this meeting? Is there a proposer for someone? Councillor Bradnam. Okay, we have a proposer and seconder. Can we agree this by affirmation? Okay, would you like to join me, Councillor Bradnam? Thank you. Those in the chamber are reminded that the meeting is being live streamed. By your presence here in the chamber and via video conference, you are deemed to have consented to being filmed and to the use of images and sound recordings for a webcast and archived recording. May I ask that those who are joining us remotely ensure that their camera and microphone remains off unless they are addressing the committee. Okay, if I can move to apologies for absence. Sarah, are there any apologies for today? Item 1.
Yes, Chair. We have apologies from Shabona Bhattacharya and we also have a couple of councillors online, Chair, Councillor Sally Ann Hart and Councillor Sunita Handwaj.
Thank you. Do members have any interest to declare in relation to any items of business on this agenda? Yes, Councillor Hull.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, I work for an organisation called the Vario Jones Foundation and we have land which street traders work. So, I have nothing to do with that particular part of the organisation.
Okay, thank you for declaring that. If an interest subsequently becomes apparent later in the meeting, please do raise this at that point. We can move to item 3, minutes of the previous meeting. The meeting was held on the 3rd of September 2025 and the minutes have been submitted for this meeting for approval. It's their page 3 to 6 in the agenda pack. If there are any matters of accuracy, please could members raise them now. Otherwise, the minutes should be approved as a correct record. Does anyone have anything to raise?
I'll propose them.
Okay, if we can propose that they're accepted, if you have a seconder. Thank you very much. And can we agree to sign the minutes by affirmation? I'm happy. Thank you. Okay, I'll just do that now. Yes, sorry, Councillor Howell.
Oh, no, it's okay. No.
Okay. That's fine.
All good.
Thank you. Okay, so the item 5 of the agenda is the review of the street trading policy. Rachel Jackson. Oh, sorry, excuse me. Public questions is next, item 4. So item 4 is public questions. We've not received any public questions for this meeting. And is that still the case? Yep, okay. In which case we'll move on to item 5, the review of the street trading policy. Rachel Jackson will now present this item. Rachel, if I could hand over to you, please.
Thank you, Chair. As per the agenda, you'll see a consultation that was undertaken in October last year, details of which are at Appendix A, starting at page 9 of your agenda. You'll recall that all points consulted on were agreed at the September committee by your good selves. A copy of the draft revised policy is attached as Appendix B, which starts from page 17 of your agenda. Members are asked to consider these revisions and determine if you wish to recommend to the Cabinet Lead that the revised policy be approved. If there are no questions, that does conclude my introduction, Chair.
Thank you. If I can open the meeting for any comments. Okay, we'll just go each section by section then. So if we go to Appendix A, it's on page 9 of your agenda packs. Oh, sorry, Councillor Wilson.
I don't know if this is the right point to bring this up, but I think there's an ambiguity between what we're proposing and the street trading policy. Is this the right time, or?
I'm happy for you to raise it now.
If you look at the no trading by the consented company in any location for more than 15 minutes. And
Which page is that?
oh, sorry, this is on. It's on the. Can't see my page 11.
Page 11, yeah.
Page 11, which and it's the point right at the top of the page. It says no trading by the consented company in any location for more than 15 minutes and to not return to that street location within 24 hours. Now, if we look at the street, if we look at page point 5 on page 21 of the pack, if we look at under mobile street consent, where the trader wishes to move from place to place in order to meet the criteria for mobile consent, whilst the trader may have consent from multiple sites, they must not trade in one location for more than 4.5 hours at a time and not return to the same site on the same day. The 4.5 hour period excludes setting up and clear up time. An example of such is a pizza van trading on the street or an ice cream van.
Oh, okay, so it's not the moving trade. Sorry, thank you, Councillor Wilson. I've just sought some clarification, and that is where it is a static ice cream van that has applied for a plot, whereas the other policy, the 15 minutes one, is for a mobile ice cream van where they're continuously moving through the district.
It's called mobile street consent. Sorry, I was just making the observation that whilst I hear what the officer says, that is quite confusing because it's under the heading 4.2 mobile street consent, and you're saying it's by virtue of it being static, that it's not conflicting with the ice cream traders' consent, but that's counterintuitive. So I'm just wondering.
Thank you,
do
Chair
need to
and Vice
clarify?
Chair. I think because we would still permit a ice cream trader to operate as a mobile street consent, because they may wish to trade a particular location for 3 to 4 hours. For example, if they've got an area near a park, for example, or a piece of private land, that would work for them. Otherwise, I mean, I'm quite happy to rename if you so wish, but obviously we then have ice cream trader. Perhaps we can call that ice cream trader brackets mobile, if that would clarify for members.
I think so. Yes, it just appears ambiguous.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. What we'll do is when we get to that section of it, we'll just clarify that as we go through, if that's okay.
If I may say so, I think the bit that needs clarifying is it's really helpful having the examples, because it does help to explain what you're talking about, one is talking about. And I think it might be helpful if the example, which says a pizza van trading on this street or an ice cream van trading in one location like a park for...
Councillor Bradnam, if we come to that bit when we come to that section, we
Yes.
can clarify the wording on that one.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Councillor Howell.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry. Councillor Redknapp.
Thank you. I just wonder if it's okay to ask quite a general question, just to kind of set the scene and help me follow kind of why we're proposing these changes. I mean, in section 5 of our general report, it says that a number of the revisions are to ensure the council's policy is reflective of national codes of practice, and where that's the case, it's referred to explicitly in the revised policy. And I could see that was the case for the chimes for the ice cream trader, but I guess I'd just like to check if that's the case for asking for highways consent, for being on the highway, for DBS consent for traders. I guess just where is that the case, and where are we actually making a decision to go different from national policy? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Everett. Well, to be honest, at 5, this is the National Code of Practice was purely relating to all the chimes. If you remember before, the proposal was several, it felt like probably more than two dozen, it felt like, different regulations and requirements regarding the Code of Practice. So it's just to simplify that by making reference to ice cream traders must comply with the National Code of Practice, which they should already be doing in any case. So that was just for the clarity from that side of it. As to say, nothing else really. We're not going against any standard or general code of practice or any general terms and conditions which you might see in another local authority.
Thank you. Are we going beyond sort of national requirements in terms of like the DBS type requirements?
No, not as, sorry, Chair. No, it's just basically it's what's seen as good practice. So some councils do. We used to do it. Then the advice was we don't need to do it. However, then just general concerns regarding conduct and customer safety, especially we're dealing with ice cream traders as well. It's obviously making sure that the person who is selling and in close contact with a child is well regulated, as we would with a taxi driver, to be honest with you. So it is just to give us a more belt and braces approach towards public safety.
Thank you. Okay, if we can turn to page 9 and just go through with the policy where the amendments are. So the proposed change is to introduce the ice cream trader consent, which then means that within the policy at page 22, we want to have a new section 7. Sorry, Councillor Howell, sorry. So if I can open for comments on this section of it.
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, just on a bit of a question more than anything else. With regards to the ice cream consent there, it says there on bullet point 2 on page 9, no trading take place within 50 metres of schools during term hours, etc., etc. I have 2 very large nurseries in one of my village and dotted around throughout the ward as well, and I'm sure many of us do. Is there a view to look at it at nurseries as well, or just keeping it to schools? It's a question, not a statement.
That's a good question. Rachel Jackson, do you have a comment?
Thank you, Chair. I think it's probably a pragmatic approach. Just say schools, nurseries. I mean, you could say places of education. But then obviously if you look for any kind of colleges and what have you, as a person of that age, old enough to make his or her own decision whether they should have an ice cream, it may well be that you do wish to say schools and preschools, for example. Would that be?
I'm not one way or the other on this. It was just more of bringing it to the committee's attention. That
I think, Councillor Howell, it would make sense to put this in purely because of the reason why I brought this in the first place was we were receiving complaints from schools and primary schools to say, obviously, parent is being forced to think we have to buy the child an ice cream because the ice cream van is out here. So obviously they'll have little children as well, so the preschool and the nurseries. So if your committee is so minded, you may wish to.
If we, sorry, yes, Councillor Bradnam.
Can I just suggest, as a cover-all phrase, we maybe will consider using schools and early years provision. Would that cover it? So that, because that would cover nurseries and preschool, wouldn't it? Which are not necessarily the same thing.
Is the committee happy to add that into with schools to have that in that wording? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If we could add that in, please, Officer Jackson. Okay. Is there anyone? Sorry. Yes, Councillor Ellington.
Thank you. I suppose my first question would be, who is going to actually enforce this? Who is going, do we have an ice cream van inspector that goes round and checks on all of this? And if so, how many actual failures to comply with the regulations were noted last year and actually stopped somebody operating?
Thank you, Councillor Ellington. Rachel?
Yes, thank you. It's the same with any kind of complaint we receive about unlicensed activity or licensed activity or complaints about licence holders. It will get reported to the licensing team. The difficulty has been so far, with being an ice cream trader, we don't know them, so we have to do a DVLA check to make sure, to see who the owner of the vehicle is. Then we then contact the vehicle and say, cease trading, obtain a consent, or we'll look at prosecuting. We had 2 of those last year, 2 different companies. We had some general complaints, and also I feel, in fairness, last year, because we had about, I think, 4 days of sunshine, I feel it was, we had a lot of, it's not, say, ignorance by the trade in the nicest possible way, because we, for example, require ice cream traders to be licensed. Huntingdon, until last year, you didn't need any permission. You could just go and pitch up and stay in the high street without a consent or permission. And we had quite a few. The 2 traders we had in question were actually from Essex, who had different rules again. So it is kind of what happens now. We'll receive the information. The idea will be, however, it's going to be a clearer process, because we do rely on the eyes and ears, because one of the complaints came from a parish, and one of them actually came from a school last year. So the parish council, if, for example, we have a trader who is licensed and has gone through all the hoops, parish has said, we don't want Mr. Smith here, then Mr. Smith will have to stop trading. If Mr. Smith doesn't stop trading, we'll look at revocation of his licence. So he can't trade at all. So that's how we work. It's basically just the general enforcement process we follow now. But being realistic, it is also a case of, with ice cream traders, it is a bit of a cat and mouse, because of course, by default, they're not there for 4 hours at a time. Typically, they're there just one street and what have you. But this is how we've managed to find it before, by parishes being good enough to actually send photos in of when they've seen people trading. But that's how we do it.
Okay. Yes, of course, Councillor Ellington.
I just feel some of this regulation is a sledgehammer to crack a nut, and I'm not sure that if we don't enforce what we are writing down and apply it, then we're a laughing stock, and we have to be very careful of that.
Thank you. Councillor Sanford? You did. That's fine. Councillor Howell?
Thank you, Chairman. I can remember myself taking photographs of an ice cream man who was selling in my own village, which went to court and was a successful conviction because he didn't have a license or one or another. So I think it very much comes down to us as well. Anyway, with regards to item number page 11, you have at the very top, no trade-in by the consenting company or any location for more than 15 minutes, and not to return to that street location within 24 hours. Now, I can understand the logic of this, but I have, myself and my colleague here, we have a very successful play park and paddling pool in our village, and we have an ice cream van which is parked there, and when he turns up, he's going to be there for she's going to be there for a lot more than 15 minutes, just serving, to be perfectly honest with you. And also, I would not like to see them not being able to return to that particular point, because it's a very busy and lucrative part. It's in a lay-by, it is on county council land. Is there any way we can look at that, or is that quite a strict particular point?
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Howells. To hopefully make you happy this morning, because it is on council land, that's an exemption. So that is out of scope of street trading. So if it's owned by a parish council have to say pavilion, the parish give approval, then the street trade can take place. Likewise for lay-by, if the county council have said yes, okay to trade there, then no bearing whatsoever on any times. It's purely down to what is deemed as appropriate by the Highways Authority and the county council in that case.
Thank you. Councillor Bagnam.
Thank you. On the same point, we've had 5 comments underneath this same point. One saying this feels far too bureaucratic. Another one saying, you know, that in a particular street that might have lots of cul-de-sacs on it, that 15 minutes, isn't long enough to serve the people who would like an ice cream, and that it might take, as Councillor Howell said, it might take longer than 15 minutes to actually serve the people who would like to have an ice cream. So I do wonder, I mean, they say in the middle of that paragraph, they say, if after 15 minutes the van is moved forward a few feet, is that a new location? So our answer would be no, because it's in the same street. equally, there are certain streets that have a number of cul-de-sacs. So if it was 15-minute per street, it would definitely not work, as there are multiple locations in the same street. And indeed, I can think of that in my own village, although I'm not sure how the ice cream traders work that road. And so there's a question of how long is it reasonable to allow the number of people who'd like an ice cream to be served. And I do wonder whether 15 minutes is actually long enough to serve the people who'd like an ice cream.
Thank you. Do you have a comment coming back?
Yes, thank you, Chair. To be honest with you, this is what was discussed, if you remember, in the committee, and you did reach the agreement saying it's 30 minutes enough, it's 15 minutes enough, it's 40 minutes enough. But the idea is these are mobile traders, and obviously there may be one situation where it's 100 odd degrees and there's a queue of 5 people and he's there for 60 minutes, the trader. I think a pragmatic approach, notwithstanding obviously the right to need to enforce, but this has seemed to be, when we look at the consultation, we currently 5 of them ice cream vendors. It's interesting that none of the vendors actually replied to the consultation. So these are lay people, should we say, who aren't necessarily involved in the trade, with their general comments on here. But as I say, with respect to the 15 minutes was ultimately what you did agree at your committee. I'm conscious if you deviate from what you agreed at the committee, we might well then have to be faced with, and I've got my legal advisor next to me and on one on mine, but I think if we are changing the policy, we've got a risk of having to go back for the consultation again. My view is, as with any of our licensing policies, it's a living document. Let's see how this works. Let's see if all of a sudden we are going to be faced with going from 5 to 500 ice cream traders. Is something we need to review and keep under review. And I think we just keep the policy fresh and keep under review. And if the 15 minutes hasn't been working or it's proven to be a burden, then of course I can come back to informal cabinet and to your licensing committee, and we can take it from there.
Thank you. Councillor Hales?
Thank you, Chair. I suppose when you sit down and think about this a bit more, as I have been, even taking into consideration what Ms Jackson said about our previous meeting when we looked at this. I live in a road which has an odd and uneven layout. So an ice cream comes and he goes twice. So he'll go down the odds for the evens and then comes the odds. And then go. And he goes out into a longer road which links almost one half of the village to the other. It's a very long road and he will stop at least 3 times in that road. It's the same road. So technically he would be breaking the rules every time he stopped in this particular thing here. And with regards to 15 minutes, I kind of take the point that Councillor Howell made with regards to, I know it was on council land, but the principle kind of remains the same. If you have a whacking great big queue, have we actually done consultation, performed consultation on how long it takes to serve a customer? It's not an ice cream, it is the customer. Can I have 10 ice creams, please, for my children's party? Will take you perhaps 5, 6, 7 minutes. Then there's the rest of the queue. So are we now stopping people trading, which is our aim is not to, excuse me. It's just food for thought. And I appreciate what you said just now about coming back if it starts to blow up in our face, but I'd rather, like you said, I'd rather it didn't blow up in our face. So I think the first time round, try and get it as close to right as we can. Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, if you could reply.
Thank you. Hopefully, Councillor Hales as well. I think the point to remember here is the 15 minutes is a kind of standard. If you did a quick Google, you'd see like 15, 20 minutes as a standard practice for ice cream trading throughout the country. It is, say, it's not intended to be a barrier. It's intended to be greater flexibility. So rather than having the old ice cream wars, as you say, we've got somebody here, you've got Giuseppe here for 4 hours, and then obviously Mr. Smith for 2 hours. It's not going to work. So this is the idea of not causing a nuisance to the local residents and local amenity, giving the balanced time, because sometimes you're absolutely right, you can hear an ice cream van, and by the time you find your wallet or your debit card, you can hear green sleeves going down the road, so you've missed the boat already. This hasn't proven to be a controversial issue for our existing vendors. So if somebody had come back and said, actually, I've been working here, and we've got some ones that have been with us for many, before my time. None of them have come back and said, actually, we found out that it's more like 30 minutes. So I'm taking it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, that this 50 minutes works. It works generally as a national standard, although it's an unwritten rule, but if you ask, most places would say 15, 20 minutes for ice cream trader. Some would be 5 minutes because it's just one person, as you know, and going along. But I think a pragmatic approach with regard to if you have a road that is, say, a mile long, for example, then obviously that's not the same location, but moving your wheels 2 feet away, so you're outside number 17, now you're outside number 23, is the same location. But I think moving I don't think we need to be so specific as to say what is a reasonable distance, because otherwise we'd have to analyse every single road and street in the district. It's not been about that. The complaints we haven't received complaints about the individual traders and what they've been, or they've been too long. And if they are, we will just get them to move along and behave.
Yep, if you'd like to come back.
I was just really, from a personal perspective, if you like, you mentioned about missing the ice cream van. As I've got older in years, I find it more difficult to reach the van in time before they drive off. And the other one is making sure there's enough time to prepare and serve the large 99 with strawberry sauce and pepper double flake. But that's really where I'm at, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Howell.
Chairman, I think we're all sitting on the same hymn sheet here. It's a practical look at it. I mean, if you look at, again, the village, myself and my colleague here represent Papworth. We have Ermine Street that runs through the south, and technically that goes from Neesworth out from the depth of Royston right up to the heights of Papworth. I wouldn't know what's beyond Papworth. There be like dragons as far as I'm concerned. But it's just the fact that we have to have a practical approach to this. And as long as that's done, I think everybody can work with that, and that's excellent.
Thank you. Councillor Bradnam.
Yes, I just wanted to remind members that we discussed the concept of street trading in, for example, Cottenham, because it has the longest high street in the country, I gather. And that's why on page 32 of the policy, we agreed this item 4, which says no trading by the consenting company in any location for more than 15 minutes and to not return to that street or location within 24 hours. And the point we added location in because we recognised that you might be at one location in a street, but then you could move on to a different location in the same street, and that would be acceptable. That was the way we got round it. That was the answer. The use of the word location was the way we managed that.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam. So if we can, unless there's any more comments on that section of it, the next proposed change is suitability of applicant. If I can just say, it's to add a fit and proper test with a DBS on application renewal on every 3 years thereafter. Does anyone have any comments in relation to this?
It seems a very sensible thing to do. It was what we felt was right in committee. So, yeah.
Okay, if there's no comments, we'll move on to the next one. Again, still page 12, the proposed change is to require an applicant to provide written consent from highways. This isn't for the ice cream traders, this is as a general street trader aspect, so it wouldn't be relating to the mobile ice cream traders. Does anyone have any comments in relation to that? Councillor Redderup.
Sorry, can I just check on that point you're making there, that it doesn't apply to ice cream traders, because it says at the top that this is for static street consent, mobile street consents, lay-by traders, ad hoc trading and ice cream traders. So it just looks, from my reading of it, that it does apply to ice cream traders.
Which section is that on? Sorry,
Sorry,
where are you reading that
from
from?
place. I'm on section 10, application requirements. Is that where you are?
Yes, I have put in as a point of clarification as well, because if you look in section D, in brackets, it says not required for ice cream traders. So I, as a proposed amendment, feel like in C, we should also put in brackets not required for ice cream traders. So that is the same point, if you're happy with that as an amendment.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Just see if there's anyone else has any comments with that as an amendment. Councillor Howell, no? No.
I was only going to ask, can I have a sheet which gives the abbreviation for BS on paragraph 1, please? I just want to...
Sorry, could you...
I was merely asking, Chairman, on page 12, point number 1, there's an abbreviation BS. I was wondering if we can have a sheet saying an abbreviation sheet, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Howe. That's in relation to a comment from the respondents, yes.
So,
just to clarify.
if I may.
Councillor Bradnam, yes.
So what we're saying is that 10A refers to all kinds of street traders as described, including ice cream traders. But what you are saying is that C, as raised by Councillor Redrup, and D both do not apply to ice cream traders. Is that what, I mean, we said it in D, but are you saying that C also should exclude? Or, sorry, I've lost track. What were we?
Yep, if Rachel Jackson, if you can confirm.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Bradham. Yes, so, and thank you, Chair. So C would say application requirements where the application is to trade on the highway, but not required for the, what we call them, mobile ice cream traders.
But this is on a privately owned location. Sorry, where the application is to trade on the highway, written consent from highways must be provided with the application. Where the application is to trade on private land, written permission from the owner of the privately owned location is to be submitted with the application on private land. So they would have that, wouldn't they?
They would.
Why would it exclude ice cream traders?
No, purely because of saying the location for the highways approval. Councillor Bradnam saying, if, for example, someone were to trade on a lay-by, would say you need to get permission from the Highways Authority. If, however, this ice cream trader, the mobile unit, is going around to say to them you need to get approval from the Highways Authority, would mean getting approval for every single road and street. But because obviously they're only there for 15 minutes, they're usually parking up in a car parking space, for example, in a safe position. So that wouldn't be required.
So can I just,
so it's
to clarify...
it's the written consent from highways.
Councillor Bradnam, sorry.
That doesn't...
Councillor Bradnam, sorry, can I just confirm my point as well? So where we're talking about the highways, can I just ask a question to clarify? Highways is the bit that we're saying relates, doesn't relate to mobile ice cream traders, but the private land could relate to the...
It could, if... That's right, Chair, yes. If it is a mobile, a normal consent, so not an ice cream trader whose business is to travel the streets, then obviously if they are trading on private land, they would need to get the private land owner's consent.
So when we were talking about adding in a bracket, should this now be two separate sub-points, one for highways and one for private land, so that it's clarified?
Yeah.
So Councillor Bradnam, do you have any other comments on that, or does that clarify it?
I think, wonderfully, Rachel Jackson understands the difference between the mobile street trading and the more long-term street trading of ice cream vans very clearly, whereas perhaps to somebody reading this, it might not be so obvious. So I do think there might be a merit in splitting C up so that it refers to where the application is to trade on the highway, that written consent is needed from highways, if you're going to stop in a lay-by kind of thing. And then secondly, where the application is to trade on private land, then you don't need it, because if they're on private land, that's up to the private landowner whether they give permission or not. And I don't think that they're two different things, so I think it might be helpful to split it.
Does anyone else have any comments in relation to splitting those two sections so that it's clarified? Councillor Redrup?
Yeah, I think that's very sensible. I just also wanted to ask if the wording for that private part of that clause could be checked, because I'm not sure it entirely makes sense.
Yes,
exactly.
Thank you.
I think it might be helpful to change that as well. I would...
It's okay. Do you have any specific proposal, or just you would like it?
I was happy for it to be split. That was
yeah.
all.
Okay.
Oh, I can give some text, proposed text, if you like.
Yeah, I'm happy for you to do so.
I think it was where the application is to trade on private land, which is not licensed as a consented premises, written permission from the owner of the privately owned location or locations are to be submitted with the application. But it doesn't mention the confirmation of authority to trade on the land, but I wasn't sure if that was still needed. So if that makes sense, I can give that to the officer if needed. But.
If you, yeah, yes, please, because of course, obviously the final draft, before it goes to obviously cabinet, obviously I will ask Councillor Osborne to sign off and approve. If there's anything major, then of course you may wish a quick circulation to your committee, but I say if it's that with Councillor Redrup's comments.
Yeah, we check with.
Of course, yeah, fine, yeah, but obviously it comes to obviously yourself first of all, then back to cabinet to validate and adopt.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to mention that it was agreed at Cabinet previously that it wouldn't need to go back to full Cabinet. It can just come back to me as the lead Cabinet member.
That's fine. If that's been agreed, then that's fine. That will be the process that will be followed. Councillor Redrup, if you could propose that wording, that's lovely. And if everyone's happy with that to be split, obviously, if anyone has any further comments when the amendment's done, feel free to comment back and we'll go from there. Does anyone else have any comments in relation to that split? Okay. If we go back to any other comments in relation to the general proposed change for written consent to be for highways for on-street applications? No. Okay, that's fine. If we move on to application requirements to require permission from the owner for privately owned locations to be submitted in relation to the wording that Councillor Redrup has now proposed. Does anyone have any comments in relation to this section? No? Thank you very much. Move on. Okay, so the next proposed change is to specify only recognised training for food safety as level 2 food safety and catering, level 2 food hygiene and level 2 food safety and hygiene. Does anyone have any comments in relation to adding this into the policy? Councillor Wilson?
I was just wondering, because it applies to everyone working within that vehicle, ice cream van, and if they take on temporary staff, would they still have to submit? Because that feels quite onerous if they've got someone just working there for a day to replace someone else. Will they still have to submit to the council the qualification?
Officer Jackson, if you could clarify.
I can always find, thank you, Councillor Wilson, I can always get some advice from, this was a recommendation from our environmental health officers, so there may be a leniency, but of course I don't know what temporary would necessarily mean, because it's temporary just for half a day to cover sickness, or it's temporary 2 weeks. So let me get some advice from our environmental health team on that, please. And I can then confirm to the chair and then to our cabinet lead.
Councillor Hales?
Thank you. I think under the responses is the reason why you need food hygiene regulation. I think the response number 2 is indicative of why we have these things. With regards to the food hygiene certificates, I think anybody with a level 2 can oversee people without a food hygiene. You still need level 1, which is the very basic. So as the owner, from the checkpoint, better choice of words, for a food outlet, that's the process to be used there. So we have one person can be trained up to the highest level, the others can follow at lower levels. And if we have temporary staff, then we tend to have, for a short term, which is a short term, but they don't have to have that at all, but they would normally stick in front of a computer or a level 1. So it's nice and easy. But that would generally be the way forward, I think.
Thank you, Councillor Hales. Does anyone else have any comments in relation to this section? No, thank you very much.
Can I just...
Yes, Councillor Bradley?
Sorry, I just wanted to ask, I'm interested that apparently we didn't get any responses from traders on this question. So maybe they all say, oh yes, me and all the people I use to cover for when I'm taking a lunch break or whatever. are trained to that level anyway. I think most of the people involved in this would be trying to make sure that was the case.
Thank you. If we move then on to duration of consents. So the proposed change here is to remove the common expiry of 31st of March and to issue a rolling 12-month from date of issue. Does anyone have any comments in relation to this? No, everyone's happy to accept that change. Thank you very much. And then the next change is to allow revocation of consents to be determined at an officer level, the principal officer or service manager, and to allow an appeal of the decision to the licensing panel. Does anyone have any comments in relation to this section? Councillor Howell?
I have a question more than anything else. If this needs to be done very quickly in an emergency, is there always a principal officer or service manager available, or that's the question. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you. Yes, Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Howells. The answer is yes. There's always somebody there. It's been operating with regard to how we do with taxi driver immediate revocations. So if I'm not here, then it would go down to, well, we have obviously the principal officers within environmental health, so we could go to them, or we have 2 service managers within environmental health as well. So there's always lots of options available.
May I, Chairman, I mean, I'm just, just playing devil's advocate here. Is there a need that if they are not available, it can escalate up to a chief executive or something like that? That's all I'm asking.
Yes.
Yeah, I would see no issue with that whatsoever. Obviously, we've got Renata here, who's our expert, but it would seem to be that is the lowest level. I'm at the lowest level. I would think to escalate that would be no issue. To go to the head of, say, ODS.
I suppose what I'm asking for, Chairman, is that if there was a need to do this in an emergency, then whoever's nearby should be the one we can grab hold of first. But I mean, as long as there's somebody available, I'm more than happy with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Howell. Councillor Bradnam?
And this follows the same principle that we use for licensing of private hire drivers. That if the officers see something that's problematic, they would take action, but would refer to a panel. So I think it makes sense. If we see something that's dangerous, obviously we want officers to be able to act in an expedient way.
Thank you. Okay, so we've gone through the proposed changes. As they appear in the documents, we've got the changes starting at page 21 of the agenda pack through to page 32. So I'm just going to run through quickly. At page 21, we've obviously got the new 7 street trading consents. So we're adding in ice cream trader with the clarification of mobile as opposed to more static traders within that wording. And then we have at page 24 the addition of the fit and proper test.
Sorry.
For all. Sorry, yes, Councillor Bradley.
Excuse me. We were going to add in some wording that used the examples to explain it might be a pizza van trading on the street or an ice cream van working from one location for a number of hours.
That is what I said about us clarifying the wording.
Okay, sorry, I didn't catch that. I think it would be helpful if we had it in the wording.
Yeah, so the wording will be to clarify a mobile trader van as opposed to an ice cream van trading in one location. It was the addition of trading in one location. So yes, Councillor Howell?
Sorry, Chairman, are we now on page...
Sorry, page 21. 21.
Okay, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of you.
Just going through the policy just to confirm where the amendments would be coming in. Yes, Councillor Wilson?
This isn't about the policy itself, it's just I've detected a couple of typos under the consented premises. The 3rd paragraph, the last line, page 21.
Page 21, yeah.
It should be attached to public houses, and in the 1st paragraph as well, attached to public houses or attached to the public houses. I don't know what was intended there.
Where was the second one?
It's under consented premises, the 1st paragraph, last line, and the 3rd paragraph, the last line.
I can see, yes. So you've got the 1st paragraph under consented premises and the 3rd one, just to add in 2 public houses. There's just 2 typos.
Oh, consented premises.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Oh, yes. Councillor Howells?
On the static street consent section, we've got 4, word for and then half.
Sorry, what page are you on?
Page 21, section 4.1.
So I'm assuming the underlined is the one we're going for.
Councillor Jackson.
Just seems a mix. It just seems a mix of font, unnecessary mix of font.
Yep.
To be honest, you've got 4.5 hours followed by 24. So kind of.
I think 4. I'll get rid of FOUR
Yeah.
and keep in the numbers.
And I was struggling to see why you put operated twice and issued twice. And these glasses I've now focused in on the comma. So I suppose that was the only reason why.
Thank you, Councillor Howes. Okay, so subject to those changes, on page 22 will be the new addition of ice cream trader, just clarifying that that is a mobile ice cream trader at section 7. There's a similar conditions, amended with conditions on that page as well, following Councillor Hale's comment. The next amendment was at page 24 to add in the fit and proper test. Councillor Hale?
This is my moment. Thank you very much. Sorry about that earlier on, it was a bit premature of me. With regards to that, the problem we've got, it says here, basic disclosure and bar in service. Now, the problem is with this, once you've always have the ability to have an advanced one, the natural tendency is to always have the advanced one. I'm just, again, open for discussion more than anything else. Is there worthwhile asking for an enhanced disclosure and bar in one, not just the basic one?
Thank you. Rachel, if you'd like to respond.
It's down to kind of the regulated profession, so an enhanced can only be dealt with by certain processes and routes. So obviously, for example, a taxi driver, whereas a basic one, anyone can apply for their own basic DBS. And so time and cost, it actually gets the same information for us. Have they been convicted of any offence, cautions, etc. So it's still showing that information. It's just limited to showing whatever information is held on the police computer and information, which we might not necessarily be able to even use, as we can't sometimes for taxi drivers with the enhanced. But it was down to the advice we received, because it was down to, it isn't a regulated profession, so we've got to be quite restricted as to when we can actually use an enhanced check. And also it's who can do that, because you need to be an umbrella body to do an enhanced check, whereas you can just go online and apply and do your own basic DBS.
Chairman, I suppose the question I'm asking is, if somebody had committed a crime against children or a sex offence, would that show up on a basic?
Yes.
Then that's fine. Okay, thank you very much.
Councillor Hales?
Just a question for Rachel, if I may. Did I hear you say earlier that nationally we didn't, then we did, then we didn't, or the other way around, and we can do what we like with DBS? I mean, I'm not arguing that we shouldn't have the DBS, but there was a comment made earlier in one of the previous papers said, should DBSs be required for a number of varying different traders and businesses that have the potential for one-on-one with a child? I remember that stuck out like a sore thumb, actually. And given the fact that they can't stop for more than 15 minutes, I just wonder, is there any merit to that comment? Should the DBS be applied? And I don't argue about DBS at all. I think it's a valid point. But are we complying with national law? I think is the first one, which I think we are. And should we consider it more across the board?
Thank you.
Yeah.
If you could respond.
Thank you, Councillor Howes. Well, the idea is that this will apply for every trader in any case. So every trader will be subject to a DBS. And as for the 15 minutes, we've heard, unfortunately, a lot of very nasty things previously about what had happened in Rotherham, but with ice cream traders near schools and what have you. And it doesn't, unfortunately, take long to start manipulating young people. And I just think for the whole safety and safeguarding aspect, it's better to be safe than sorry. We've always said about being fit and proper. The easiest way to know what fit and proper is to do the basic DBS check from there. And then if we're not happy about somebody, then a bit like a driver application now, we can make the referral, to your committee. But I just feel it's the safest approach. And I do obsess about obviously safeguarding regulatory, being obviously a licensing officer for so long. I just think we've just got to make sure that we are 100%, well, as close to 100% satisfied that the trader is fit and proper in all senses, hygiene and criminal conviction wise, to be trading and let loose on a one-to-one basis.
Councillor Hales, do you want to come back?
I'm glad I asked the question the way I did, because your response was what I was hoping for. Because it's laid it out in no uncertain terms as to why, and with perhaps examples from around the country. So I thank you for that.
Councillor Wilson, you have a comment?
Yes, I have a similar question here to the one on food safety certificates. If someone takes on a temporary member of staff because they're not fully staffed and they haven't got a DBS, then they could be prevented from actually carrying out their trade if they have to do something very last minute. So would it be, I can understand why the DBS certificate is needed, but if there's a temporary member of staff who is under the supervision of the street trader who themselves has the DBS, would that be acceptable or not?
Officer Jackson,
Sorry.
do you want to return?
Sorry, thank you, Chair. Thanks, Councillor Wilson. We would actually not be issued, because we would issue a permission or a consent for each trader and their assistants. So they wouldn't technically be issued a licence or permission because they're only short term. But again, the question goes to what is short term? I don't know whether we want to ask Felicity or Norenata really for some advice on that as to whether or not we should be having something in there to say a short-term emergency cover, because we know this will happen. You can't expect a trader to stop working for 3 days, 4 days, or what have you. So I don't know whether you want to put it to a chair, to one of our legal advisors, really, because I'm obviously happy to go with whatever is approved here to be most pragmatic and reasonable, whilst not jeopardising public safety.
Yeah. Councillor Bradnam?
Thank you. I'm just trying to think about it in the practical way one envisages this happening. So if I take you to an ice cream vendor at Orford who has the business from a shop, but she also has a mobile sort of cart that she puts in a car park. So this is somebody who's there for a long time. But periodically, she needs to obviously answer the call of nature, and just periodically she has her daughter say, I don't know, I'm not sure if it's, I'm just making this up actually because it's not the actual person in question, but suppose she gets her daughter to cover the stand while she's just out for a while, and obviously she's under the supervision of the street trader who has the licence, and in that temporary sense, do we need to say something, as Councillor Hales referred to, that any short-term temporary cover is under the supervision of the person who has the licence and the DBS somehow? I mean, not obviously because they're not there. They can't supervise the person while they're not there. But
vouched for.
Yes, exactly.
I don't see any reason. I'm just thinking whether Felicity, I know she's not got a camera on, or Renata here has got any comments to make, but we could perhaps have a emergency stroke relief cover, where obviously we're accepting that these things do happen, and whether or not you say for immediate and expected cover, we would waive the requirement for food hygiene and DBS requirements where the assistant is working in direct supervision of the trader.
But put it the other way around and say the responsibility for that short-term cover lies with the person who has the licence. And so if that covering person, temporary person, is seen to be doing something that's not appropriate, then it's the trader's licence that cops it, so to speak. So, I mean, that puts a big onus on the person who has got the DBS check and all that, and it means that they've got to say, if it is their daughter covering just while she has a lunch break, then she makes it absolutely clear, remember, these are the food hygiene things I've told you, these are the, you know, so, I don't know, is that a way that we accept it, that could be acceptable?
Officer Jackson, do you have a comment?
Thank you. I'm just obviously my colleague next to me as well,
Yep.
as our Chief Monitoring Officer. How about, Noranato, we say emergency stroke relief cover, where temporary cover is required, the consent holder maintains full responsibility to ensure compliance with.
With DBS.
Yeah.
With DBS and food hygiene.
Because obviously they wouldn't have a DBS and they wouldn't have the food hygiene because it's just literally, as Councillor Bradham's example, it's just the daughter or their son who's stepping in.
Just to clarify, it would be for them to comply with the fit and proper test if you're going to take out DBS.
Yes, exactly.
And to comply with food hygiene requirements in relation to the emergency cover.
Yes.
We're happy with that. Does anyone have any comments in relation to adding that into the policy? Okay, everyone seems fine with that, thank you.
That's okay, then
Yep. Councillor Wilson?
Sorry, me again with a typo. Under 9 consultations, the third bullet says South Cambridge Council Environmental Health. Should this be South Cambridgeshire District Council, just for accuracy?
It should, thank you so much. I'm quite embarrassed now because that's obviously gone through 3 spell checks because we'd have 3 policy reviews. So it's, yes.
Thank you. So then page 25 is just adding in ice cream traders, again subject to that being mobile ice cream traders. And underneath the section A, we had clarification that section C will be split into highways and privately owned accommodation. Councillor Hales-Coyne?
I'm so sorry, Chair. I thought I'd take advantage of Mr. Google and the AI. DBS checks for temporary cover such as holiday, maternity, short-term agency roles have the same legal requirements as permanent positions. The determining factor is the activities performed, not the employment status. If a temporary role involves regulated activity with children or vulnerable adults, an enhanced DBS check is required even if the role is only for a few days. So that gives you a kind of a vague idea.
I suggest you can't do that.
Thank you, Councillor Hales. That would be the regulated activity that's referring to. Is that correct?
Yeah, option for temporary cover.
For regulated activity.
I think most of this, as Councillor Howard alluded to, is mainly for regulated work. So ad hoc that we're talking about probably gets covered okay.
Yeah. If we can just confirm that with legal, I believe it's regulated where this isn't a regulated activity.
You're quite correct, it is for regulated activities, but I think on the whole, as a council, we probably want to show that we take this quite seriously, especially when it relates to minors or people under the age of 17. It would be incumbent on us to make sure that the licensed trade holder is taking full responsibility and taking that, making sure that they've got the staff with the appropriate certification to be able to liaise or deal with children or minors.
And are we happy that the emergency cover that we've just discussed, in where be it that the licence of the person supervising would be the one at risk, covers that?
They would be the one taking responsibility, so it would be for them to make sure they do a DBS check.
Oh.
Or to make sure that they have
No, but that was the whole.
Sorry, carry on.
Sorry. I mean, the wording we've used here is certification for all applicants, employees and assistants. So I would think that would cover that as well, just because they're aware that they're going to be having someone temporary. They would make sure that they've actually covered themselves, especially when it comes to, they have got insurance as well and liability in that sphere. It would be perfectly acceptable for us to expect them to make sure that whoever they're putting in charge or whoever they're putting to cover has some sort of responsibility in terms of certification.
So just to clarify, so that would be either that they would then, if they know it's going to be a long-term temporary cover, they obtain a DBS, or for emergency cover, they don't obtain the DBS, but they know that they are responsible for supervising and ensuring that that person is a fit and proper person and is aware of food hygiene in order to cover those 2 tests. Is that correct?
Sorry, I think we're probably at cross purposes.
Yeah, no, it's fine, just clarify.
Sorry, I think from a point of view of having the street trader, it's their responsibility. They're the ones with the certificate, and it's incumbent on them to make sure they have the appropriately certified staff to do the work, even in an emergency. I understand the example that Councillor Braddon made about the daughter, etc. I would assume the daughter would be at least 17 plus and therefore subject to or able to have a DBS check herself. And if I were a trader, I would make sure that I had those things ready in advance for those sorts of situations. But that's probably...
Sorry. So what Nuranata is telling us is that even for the relief cover, the trader needs to ensure that whoever's doing the relief cover does have a DBS check. This is what you've said. We were saying, could we allow the trader to take responsibility for that? And you said yes, but to make sure that the person's got a DBS check, even if this person's only going to cover for a very short time. So those are two different answers, and it doesn't comply with what we said under the wording. So we need to just clarify what we're saying. Are we saying that if the street trader recognises that he might need cover, they have to make sure that that person has a DBS check and the food hygiene? So in other words, we're going right down to even the temporary cover has to have all those, the food hygiene regs and all of that.
You can respond.
Yeah, just to say again, I mean, even though street traders are also businesses, and as businessmen or businesswomen, they should make sure they have the right things to be compliant. Because if they were to have an inspector turn up and someone's behind it, the inspector's not going to know who's currently trading and will probably ask the question to make sure that they actually have got the right certification. So it's incumbent on them. If they have a list of people, I'm assuming in the case of an emergency, they would already have a list of people they have to take on those roles, and will then at that point make sure that they've got that covered. That would be my interpretation as a business owner, because they've got the responsibility of making sure that because they're the ones that are going to be subject to any enforcement matters should they not be compliant.
So thank you for clarifying that. So what we're saying now is the caveat that we've just discussed about emergency relief cover is null and void, really, because they should have a temporary person or people who they can call on that are DBS checked and are food hygiene checked.
Especially for the reason we've given earlier in terms of safeguarding and looking after making sure that minors, etc., because it kind of defeats us saying that we're looking at that, we'll be strongly opposed to that, and then giving sort of an excuse for certain circumstances, because then it becomes, well, what excuse works and what excuse doesn't work, and it becomes a bit of a problem in terms of being consistent across the board.
Thank you, that's great.
Chairman, could you just clarify what's been agreed? I didn't quite get that.
Oh, yeah, that's fine. I was just about to say. So what we're now saying is, where we had discussed the emergency and relief cover as a caveat, we were saying that the person who owns the licence could have someone in who didn't have a DBS or didn't have food hygiene. Legal have just clarified that actually that isn't the case. They should still have a DBS and they should still have food hygiene. So I'm wondering now whether we need to clarify in the section on page 24, to assist with the fit and proper test, we should add at the end, including emergency cover, just so that people are aware that everyone must have a DBS and everyone must have food hygiene, regardless of how long they are looking after the business.
I think that's perfectly acceptable. I think that's only, it seems bizarre that one person has it and they can get somebody else in who doesn't. Yes, thank you.
So if everyone is happy with that, we would include at the end of that sentence the amendment, including the fit and proper test, including a DBS, to include emergency relief cover. Chairman,
and I'm not going to try and get on to the next area, which is obviously for the officers, but should somebody be found to be covering without one of those two or either, would that then be an automatic suspension of licence?
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Chair. I think obviously it would clearly depend on each circumstance and any kind of argument they had. Is there any duty of care? What duty of care was shown there? Otherwise, it would be a revocation because he's failed to meet the terms and conditions of their licence.
Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Wilson?
So, on the suitability of applicant, it says to provide a basic disclosure and borrowing service
on application renewal and every 3 years thereafter. So can we assume that if the temporary cover does have the DBS, it doesn't have to be provided to the council, that is just on application and renewal, that we just have to trust the street trader to make sure that their staff all have this DBS? And it doesn't have to be provided to the council.
If I may, I think in terms of the training certificate will be given to the actual street trader, not to their employees. It is up to obviously the employer will have those records kept for themselves, and should be required at that point, we'll ask for it, but it wouldn't be part of the application for the street trading licence.
Thank you.
Does anyone have any other comments in relation to this point? Lovely, thank you. So I think we've confirmed now that we will just be adding in the additional portion at the end of that amendment of including emergency relief cover. Okay,
Sorry, Chair, can I just comment just on one final thing for Councillor Wilson? I think the question was, when somebody applies, they and their assistants have to have all these documents come in. If all of a sudden we've got a new person coming in, then we'll have a process in place which will say, add an assistant, and then they can just bring in, Mrs X, and she will have her DBS and training, and we can add her to the consent. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Howes.
On the DBS thing, I think to mention, reading something in here about the update service.
Yes.
Is that right? It is in there, isn't it?
Is the update service actually specifically mentioned, Officer Jackson?
No, it's not a requirement for this, it'll just be obtain the DBS. You can maintain the DBS subscription.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get at. So if you're required to have a DBS by our set of rules, if you were to sign up to the update service, you won't have to have another DBS check. It continues. That DBS check is then essentially live, which I'm just reading here. So there might be worth putting that in there to save you having the 3-year check, go for the update service, and then you are continually checked. You can also transfer that between employers.
Just to clarify in the policy that you can use the update service rather than resubmit every 3 years.
You have to have a DBS check. Then you're within, I think it's within 28 days, you have to sign up for the update service, which costs you 13 quid a year. But then you only pay for the £13 every year, which they direct debit.
Yeah.
And that then suffices as a DBS check. You don't have to have another DBS check.
Councillor Jackson, Officer Jackson, sorry, I keep calling you Councillor.
Lots of different names today. Okay, can I propose then for your committee where we say disclosure of borrowing service on application, stroke renewal, and every 3 years thereafter, we say all evidence of maintained DBS update service subscription. Quite a mouthful, but it's what we use for taxes. Thank you.
If everyone's happy with that, we'll add that into the wording. Okay, moving to page 25, it was where we had split under 10A, split C into 2 portions, one relating to highway and one relating to private land, with the wording from Councillor Redrup. And then just to clarify that C, in relation to highways, again in brackets, is not required for ice cream traders, but that it is for the private land. That just clarifies that point.
And can I suggest we do that as C1, the bit about highways, and C2, little 2, Roman 2, the bit about private land. So we recognise this is about the land that you're working for.
Officer Jackson,
Absolutely fine, whichever C or D or C1, 1, 2, I don't mind. C1 and 2. Yeah.
C1 and 2, lovely, thank you. And then on page 26, sorry, yes. Sorry, Councillor Garvey.
You say they have to get written consent from highways. Is there anywhere in the document the address that they have to apply to? Because I might not know how to do that.
We can certainly add the email address to the application pack.
Thank you. Page 26 is adding in the basic DBS certificate for all applicants involved in street trading. Would that also be where we would include the update service as well? Okay, and then we've on page 27, it would be instead of the application date of the 1st of April to 31st of March, it's now going to be the 12 months rolling on application date. And then on page 28 is the referral to the principal officer or service manager instead of the licensing panel, clarifying again the officer further down after the bullet points, and then including a referral to licence panel. And if you're agreed by the decision, you have the right of appeal to the licensing panel, which is in line with the taxis. And the next amendment is on page 31, which is the standard conditions. Yes, Councillor Bradman.
With private hire situations, we've kind of, as I understand it, slightly moved away from the officer making a decision that if they're worried about any application or renewal, they refer it to the panel first without having made a decision themselves, don't they, Rachel? And what I'm just slightly concerned about is that we did that deliberately because we didn't want the panel to be making a decision that might be against that of the officer. And I'm just wondering if that wording covers that in a way that's equally, doesn't put the licensing panel at a position where they're at odds with the officer. I'm just wondering about that.
Rachel?
Thank you. Yeah, well, the taxi policy, we did change that. So there's an immediate breach on an application if there is a conviction, a relevant offence, so it's not fit and proper because of the policy. We now reject that. So the right of appeal is no longer to the licensing subcommittee or panel, that is to the magistrate's court. If there's a grey area, so it's not got a relevant conviction, however, information received from, say, Wolverhampton Council had said, we revoked him because of X, Y, and Z, so we are not happy he is fit and proper, then you're right, that comes to the committee. It's removed that, but because the right of your decision is final with regard to street trading, there's not a right of appeal to the magistrate's court. That is the difference here.
Right.
So you are in a way, the magistrate's court making that final decision.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Okay, and then if we continue back to page 31, 22, you've got the addition of the level 2 food safety and catering, food hygiene and safety and hygiene certificates, as discussed. And then the new standard conditions for the ice cream traders, which are set out as obtaining permission from the parish town council to trade in the location, no trading within 50 metres of the school unless express permission has been obtained.
Or early years provision.
Or early years provision, thank you for the reminder there. So it's 50 metres of school or early years provision to be added into that paragraph.
Unless express permission has been obtained.
By the school or just obtained, yeah. We take off by school. So that will be no trading to take place within 50 metres of the school or early years provision during term times, hours/times, unless express permission has been obtained. No trading after 7:30. No trading by the consented company in any location for more than 15 minutes, and not to return to that street/location within 24 hours, which covers the longer streets. The consent holder must ensure compliance with the code of practice on noise in relation to the chimes, and then there's just the link there. So, can I just confirm? If there's any other comments, Councillor Wilson?
Yes, on the standard conditions for ice cream traders, it says no trading to take place within 50 metres of schools during term hours, times, unless express permission has been obtained by the school. Should that be from the school? Oh, sorry. Okay.
Sorry, Councillor Wilson. We've stopped now, so it's just express permission has been obtained,
Right, okay.
just so that it includes the early years provisions
Okay,
as well.
thank you. I missed that bit.
Okay, so thank you for the comments on that. So the officer recommendation is that the licensing committee consider the proposed amendments as we've discussed today with the amendments that have been accepted and recommend to the lead cabinet member for environment that the revised street trading policy is approved. Let's confirm that we're happy, and if we have a proposer. Councillor Bradnam and a seconder, Councillor Hales. And can we agree to this recommendation by affirmation?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, so that's agreed. Thank you very much. That now ends the meeting and brings this to a close. I'd like to thank you for all your attendance, all your comments and your time. And can the meeting producer now end the live stream? Thank you very much, everyone.